This may look familiar to you. This is crop dusting. Over 9,000 aircraft that cover 180 million acres of farmland every year. Crop dusting is a very dangerous practice because the airplane pilot has to fly low in order to spray the pesticides on the crops. This year's reigning crop? Corn. And I'm here to tell you why. We've all seen this before, a standard gas pump. However, have you ever given this sticker much thought? Ethanol. It's in over 95% of the gasoline sold in the United States today. Ethanol, when used in our gasoline, is an alcohol created from corn. The concept of using ethanol in gasoline goes back to the 70s oil and energy crisis. Scientists thought they could save petroleum by putting ethanol in our gasoline. However, when the oil crisis faded away, the use of ethanol was justified by saying that it reduced pollution and carbon emission. Fast forward to 2007, when Congress enacted the Renewable Fuels Act, giving us the ethanol that we have in our gasoline today. It's called E10 gasoline because it's 10% ethanol and 90% gasoline. Now let's crunch the numbers to see how ethanol affects our land, money, food, and water. E10 gasoline makes up over 95% of the gasoline used in the United States, and Americans consumed 140 billion gallons of gasoline in 2015. That's 13 billion gallons of corn-based ethanol needed for our gasoline every year. And each year, roughly 40% of our corn goes to making ethanol. Furthermore, we currently use nearly 100 million acres of land for our corn. To put that into perspective, that's an area the size of California. In terms of water, the corn that goes into our ethanol takes 50 trillion gallons of water a year. Less water flows over Niagara Falls in 2 years. Ethanol also takes a large portion of our money, with US corn subsidies totaling billions of dollars a year. But there seems to be a nobler reason to use it. As stated before, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, isn't that the whole reason we're using this stuff? Authors Maura Allaire and Stephen Brown in the Journal of the International Association of Energy Economics took a closer look in 2015. They found that ethanol has a slightly lower life cycle greenhouse gas emissions than regular gasoline. However, they explained that ethanol subsidies raised overall gas consumption, partly because the government funding lowered gas prices, and partly because E10 gasoline is less fuel efficient, so more is needed. So in the end, Allaire and Brown dubbed it a green paradox, because it hurts more than it helps. Let's move on to some of the mechanical issues caused by E10 rather than normal gasoline. The problem is serious enough that some automobile companies dedicate whole pages on their websites on how to prevent ethanol-related issues and what to do if you have one. A major problem is that it absorbs water from the air around it. In fact, fuel with 10% ethanol absorbs up to 50 times more water than standard gasoline. Many cars, especially older models, have gas tanks that aren't properly sealed, and as a result, phase separation occurs. The fuel separates into two distinct layers, gasoline on top and a water-ethanol mix on the bottom. This can be very problematic for a car. Some of the symptoms include, but aren't limited to, lower fuel octane, poor engine performance, corrosion, and rust. Ethanol in itself can be damaging when it comes into contact with hoses, seals, gaskets, aluminum, and other metals, even plastics. All of these problems force boaters to use ethanol-free gasoline, and many car owners take precautions against E10 gasoline by keeping their gas fresh through the process of draining, driving, or adding stabilizers to their fuel mixture, even occasionally testing their fuel for water content. It is important to remember who's paying for this: the American taxpayer. However, as ABC and Fox author/analyst John Stossel says, cars run on fuel, politicians run on votes. He goes on to explain in a January 2016 article how Iowa is the first state to vote in the primaries, and being the biggest ethanol producer of any state, it is favorable for a politician to support ethanol and do well in the first state. Most political candidates on a 4-year cycle suddenly become ethanol supporters again. Iowa, Minnesota, and Indiana are all major producers of America's ethanol, and they also happen to be 27 electoral votes that presidential candidates fight for every election cycle. It is also important to point out that many food and environment organizations are starting to put pressure on America to end our biofuel subsidy programs. Environmental groups like Friends on Earth, the Natural Resource Defense Council, and the Clean Air Task Force all oppose the use of ethanol. The UN Food and Agriculture Association and the International Food Policy Research Institute called the U.S. to suspend the mandate requiring gasoline sellers to put more ethanol in their gas. In the past, even the World Food Program and International Fund for Agriculture Development, along with the FAO, warned that soaring grain prices would cause a repeat of the 2007-2008 world food crisis. In an issued statement, they said that countries need to review and adjust policies that encourage the alternate use of grains, including biofuel mandates. So to sum up, almost all of the gasoline sold in the US today is E10, 10% ethanol in gasoline, while some government officials are vying for E15 and even E85 fuels, saying that they are environmentally beneficial. The greenhouse gas effect of ethanol in gasoline has been largely disputed, but after taking a closer look on fuel consumption, it appears to actually slightly increase greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, ethanol can have negative effects on boats, small machinery, and older cars. The corn that goes into this ethanol requires an unsustainable amount of food, water, and land to produce. Corn subsidies cost the American taxpayers every year and motivate politicians to garner votes in corn-growing states by supporting them. We have to realize that a lot more goes into our tanks than corn. We have to be cautious of our fuel choices, and finding a local ethanol-free gas station is easier than you think. Ask yourself, is corn food or fuel? I think you know the answer.